I'm John Batchelor. This is the John Batchelor Show. Bangladesh is part of the puzzle of the subcontinent. Many years ago, it was East Pakistan, but today it is a standalone country, just passing through an election that was much contested. And Gordon Chang of Forbes.com is here with me because we're joined again by a man who helped us understand the election and the challenges for the re-elected Prime Minister, Sajeeb Wazed, an advisor to the Prime Minister who's now returned to the United States where he spends part of his time. Sajeeb, a very good evening to you and a good new year. We begin with an unhappy story, but the last time you were with us, you mentioned that there had been terror attacks, and that had been part of the equation of the elections because one party had refused to participate, and that party was associated with terrorist acts. This one looks especially provocative and brutal. Idols of Hindu goddesses destroyed by unidentified persons in southwestern Bangladesh, the latest in a string of incidents against the minority Hindu community. Is this part of the terror campaign you were talking about when we spoke the last time? Good evening to you.
Hi, John. Thanks for having me. Yes, it is. This is immediately following the elections. You've had several attacks on the minorities. The defacing of the temples and the goddesses is just the latest, but even prior to that, there were worse attacks directly on Hindu families in two specific villages. Their houses were vandalized, burnt down. The villagers themselves, the Hindu villagers, were chased across the fields and away from their villages. Luckily, no one was killed, but there were several such attacks right after the elections.
How do the attackers know that people are Hindus? Do they look differently? Do they speak a different language? Or do they just congregate in villages so that people assume that everyone in village X is not a Muslim?
These, in certain areas, there are certain villages have greater population of Hindus, and these were such areas. And most of these villages are rather small, where the villagers pretty much know each other, so they know who's a Hindu. They're relatively small areas.
So this is one villager attacking a neighbor, then?
Pretty much. Well, in some of these instances, the villagers were able to identify the attackers, and they were identified as members of the former opposition party who boycotted the elections. They were also identified as members of Jamaat-e-Islam, which is the fundamentalist party, which is a coalition partner of the BNP.
The puzzle here are these look to be Hindus being attacked because they're supporting or suspected of supporting the Awami League? Is that it? They're regarded by their co-religionists as deceitful? Why are they attacked?
It's mainly to drive away the vote from the Awami League. Hindus the Awami League is the secular party.
Right.
So typically 75 to 80% of the Hindus vote for the Awami League. And this has been a consistent effort. In fact, this started after the 2001 elections, which the BNP Jamaat coalition won. Right after that election, there was a wave of attacks, including many killings against the Hindus. And at that time, many Hindus fled Bangladesh into India. And this was an attempt really to punish and intimidate the Hindus for voting for the Awami League, as well as try to get some of them to leave in the hope that in future elections they wouldn't vote.
And the destruction of Hindu goddesses, how is that interpreted? Is that meant to be a calling card, provocative, just vandalism? How does that work in the headlines in Bangladesh?
That is simply meant to intimidate. This is a tactic that Jamaat-e-Islam used as far back as our War of Liberation. Jamaat-e-Islam actually took the side of the Pakistani government, and they formed militias which went around terrorizing and murdering Hindus at the time, committed mass atrocities, war crimes, for which many of their leaders are now behind bars. But they targeted Hindus specifically right from then because Hindus were seen as, again, back then pro-Awami League because Awami League was leading the independence movement. And so this is a trend that has continued every time Jamaat, with the help of the BNP, has been in a position to undertake attacks.
Let's turn to the prospects for Bangladesh. It was much in the news here. You know this very well because you're in Washington. Last year, because of catastrophes, the collapse of one building, a fire where the window screens were locked, and there was no good help for the people trying to get out. My understanding is that the low-wage worker merchandise, the garment industry that was in East Asia, in China, has now migrated to Bangladesh and other parts of the subcontinent. And that is a great success. One way to present why people were crowding into these factories and working in bad conditions is that it was a way out of the poverty of the villages.
Right.
Now I see that the industry continues to grow even after the catastrophes. Western and European manufacturers are making new promises about looking for subcontractors and abuses. However, this is about the Bangladesh Commerce Minister. His name is Tofail Ahmed, complaining that while there's a market for their goods in the United States and the European Union and Canada, India not so much. Why is that? Why would India not accept those cheap goods?
Because traditionally until now, India has been one of our main competitors in the garment industry. It's only been in the last 5-6 years that we have actually overtaken India in terms of volume. And India, because of their economic growth in the last 5 to 10 years, their costs have gone up. So it's now suitable for Bangladeshi goods. We are now price competitive within India. However, India has traditionally kept up trade barriers. There has been some relaxation. They've allowed certain types of garments in without any duty, but overall, there's still tariff barriers which we're negotiating with them.
And is this trade between India and Bangladesh, is it growing? Is it getting smaller? What's the general situation? Because it would seem to me that the two countries would be normal trading partners.
Yes, there's always been a huge volume of trade between India and Bangladesh. Typically, it has been in other areas, mostly food, a lot of cattle, vegetables, rice, things of that nature. Garments has not traditionally been one of them because most of the export markets for our garments have been Western and wealthier countries. So now we are, for the first time, able to sort of target the Indian market, the Chinese market, etc. And so right now we're still negotiating, and we're hopeful that the Indians will slowly ease some of these.
Sajeeb Wazed, an advisor to the Prime Minister of Bangladesh, 150 million people, less than 10% are Hindu, under attack because of their alliance with the Awami League, now in power. Gordon Chang of Forbes.com. I'm John Batch.